What does it mean to honor your parents? How good of a job do you do in honoring your parents? And what about your children? Do they honor you well enough? And how can you inspire and instruct them to honor you better? Stick around. My name is Rabbi Yitzwine of Young Israel Aish of Las Vegas, and I want to invite you to another edition of Life is Great. Good morning. You know, honoring one's parents, the commandment to honor thy father and mother, is one of the most important and yet one of the most difficult commandments in the entire Torah, in the entire Bible. It's so difficult, as a matter of fact, that there's one Talmudic sage who said, fortunate is the person that has no parents. What's interesting about that sage is that his father died while his mother was pregnant, and his mother died in childbirth. Imagine for a moment a person growing up and looking at around the world and saying, you know, you poor slobs, you're having such a difficult time honoring your parents. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I don't have parents. Imagine that. But I think if we were to examine our lives a little bit, we would all understand it is difficult to honor our parents. Most of us don't even know what it means to honor our parents, or to the extent that one must honor our parents. Everybody knows it's made it to the top 10, right? To one of the 10 commandments. As a matter of fact, I even had a friend of mine in rabbinical school. He did not grow up religious. And his parents, his mother especially, was actually anti-religious. When he decided to learn Torah and adopt the commandments as part of his lifestyle, his mother was very against it. And she one time even said to him, I forbid you to become religious. And you have to listen to me because it's one of the commandments to listen to your parents. Imagine. But you know, many people experience a similar dichotomy, especially with difficult things. And quite frankly, I don't know one person who can actually say with a full heart they've never done anything to disappoint or upset their parents. So today I want to spend a few moments, examine what does it mean to honor our parents, and examine how can we do better. So I went out to some of you and asked some of you, what did you think was the most difficult aspect about honoring your parents, and how can you do better? Let's see what some of you had to say. Rebecca, how old are you?
I'm 25.
And you are the child of Mariana here, right?
Yes.
Okay. What does it mean to honor your parents?
Well, I mean, they've given you everything, your whole life. You know, you should really give everything back that you can, you know, the most you can.
How does, Mariana, how does Rebecca do in the commandment to honor her mother?
Rebecca does beautifully. She really does very, very well.
What about yourself? Do you have any difficulties in honoring your parents?
Sometimes, and then you have to remember, as Rebecca said, that your parents gave you life, and that there are things you have to do sometimes that are duty, and not necessarily because you want to do them, but that's part and parcel. And I think ultimately we're very happy that we've done it.
Rebecca, what is the most difficult part about honoring your mother?
Well, it's the fact that, you know, I'm worried about myself, but, you know, I worry about her sometimes too. You know, and I never want to upset her. You know, I want to do the best I can to make her proud of me, and and grow up to be somebody she can be proud of. You know, so that I can feel like I'm like the right daughter for her. You know, like she did everything right.
Can you ever honor your parents while at the same time disobeying them?
I don't know.
Mariana, can you honor your parents by disobeying them?
Perhaps not by disobeying them, but they may not understand why you're doing what you're doing at that time. I don't think anybody sets out to specifically not honor their parents, but I think sometimes you have different facts that you're dealing with in different situations that perhaps they don't understand, and they can't understand based on their backgrounds.
Excellent. Well, Rebecca, I think we let you off the hook. Okay, so way to go. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
You know, it's a well-known fact that in life, we all need motivation. And I think that when we look at any of the commandments, whether it's one of the 10 commandments or not, we need to know the why behind the commandment. Now, the basic answer to why do we perform any of the commandments is because God told us to. But at the same time, there's insight that if we examine why, what's behind a commandment, we can really grow from the commandment and we can become inspired to do the commandment more. And this is how we have to attach ourselves, not only to inspire ourselves to honor our parents better, but in terms of raising our children to help our children honor us better. So let's look at why do we have that commandment to honor our parents? There's a lot of people that think honoring your parents is all about payback. My parents, they helped me, they changed my diapers when I was young, and they fed me, and they clothed me, and they paid for college. And all of that is true, but it's not as much payback as it is gratitude. For example, and what's interesting about showing gratitude to our parents is that the commandment to honor thy mother and father was given to the generation of Jewish people who had just left Egypt and now were wandering in the desert for 40 years. Well, what did the parents do for the children for those 40 years? They didn't feed them. No, the food came from the manna from heaven. They didn't give them water. No, the water was the well of Miriam, followed the Jewish people around the desert for 40 years. The clothing, well, our Talmud tells us that the clothes of the Jewish people, they were protected by the clouds of glory, and they didn't even wear out. So it's interesting. Why do we honor our parents? What aspect of gratitude is involved in honoring our parents? It's the aspect of gratitude that they gave us life. Now imagine for a moment that you were drowning in a lake, and someone risked their life to save your life. You would be forever in debt to them. They saved their life. They saved your life. Well, you know what? If we look back at the Almighty's given us life. Our parents have given us life. And yes, the Talmud, our oral tradition, teaches us that there are 3 partners in creation. There's a father, a mother, and God. And therefore, when we look at our father and mother and God, we have to learn to develop a greater sense of appreciation for, look, you gave me life. Even, and we'll talk about this later, even if we feel a little shortchanged by our parents. And in a certain sense, we live in a generation more than any other that feels shortchanged by our parents. We live in a world that is so affluent that parents give so much to their children, children feel entitled, and with that sense of entitlement, have a lot of resentment against their parents and say, why should I honor my parents? So in today's world, perhaps more so than any other time, it's important for us to recognize the value, the gift that our parents gave us just by giving us life. And if we are wise and if we're spiritual, so then we will have that ability to lift that appreciation from our parents to a relationship with God. That's the first reason why we have to honor our parents. Now, as we mentioned before, the mitzvah, the commandment to honor our father and mother, that's actually mentioned in the 10 Commandments. And if you show up at my synagogue, Young Israelite of Las Vegas, right here in the front of the room, we have a symbol of the 10 Commandments. We look up at the tablets there. The first commandment on your right-hand side is, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. The next one is, don't have any other idols other than God. Don't take the Almighty's name in vain. The 4th commandment is to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And the 5th commandment is to honor your father and mother. That is on the first of 2 tablets. The 2nd tablet has other things to talk about. It says, don't murder, not to be confused with don't kill. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't, and then we continue on. The first 5 commandments are all about man to God commandments. The next 5 commandments are all about man to man commandments. Where does the commandment to honor your father and mother fall? In the set of commandments that are between God and man. In other words, the commandment to honor your parents is not a commandment between man and man. I don't honor my father and mother because I'm a nice guy. I honor my father and mother because it is the foundation of a relationship with the Almighty. It is impossible for a person to truly have a great relationship with God and at the same time despise and have no relationship with their parents. I'll say that again. And you might not agree with me on this, because I'm sure there are many people we know that say, I don't get along with my parents and God and I are coochie-coo. Well, I'm here to tell you, you might think you're close with God, but ask yourself, if the Almighty gave you parents, and even if your parents were not good to you, and you refused to have a relationship with them, not that they refused to have a relationship with you, but you refused to have a relationship with them, how does that look in the eyes of the Almighty? And ultimately, our relationship with God is going to be dependent upon how our actions and our attitudes in life look in the eyes of the Almighty. So if you want a good relationship with God, then you have to ask yourself, do I have gratitude to the people who have helped me? And it would be a very difficult task to find people who've helped you more than those who've given you life. You know, it's an interesting thing. There's a great story told of, there was a great rabbi one time who was in a hospital room, and he was sharing the room with a professor of atheism. Yes, there are some universities that teach atheism as a course. Well, what's interesting is the rabbi's children and grandchildren, they used to come often, and they used to visit, and they used to honor him, and they would get him food and drink and make sure all of his needs were taken care of. Interesting enough, the professor of atheism, well, nobody visited him. I mean, his wife came once or twice, and his children didn't even bother showing up. So one time the professor says, Rabbi, we've been lying in the same hospital room for, last week. We've become friends. I see your children, your grandchildren, even great-grandchildren, they're always coming to visit you. Why are they showing you so much honor? And my children, my grandchildren, they don't even bother to visit me, barely get a phone call. So the rabbi said the following. He said, in my world, my children look at me and they say, I'm one generation closer to Moses, closer to the generation of the Jewish people who left Egypt and stood at Mount Sinai where God revealed to them. So they look at me as I'm one step closer to the revelation from God at Mount Sinai. And they show me honor for that. But when your grandchildren look at you, they remember what you've taught them. And they remember that you taught them that you are one generation closer to being an ape. So therefore, how do you want your parents to look at you? How do you want to look at your parents? Do you want your children to look at you like you're one generation closer to being a monkey? Or do you want your children to look at you like you're one generation closer to being an even greater person? When we honor our parents, we show our parents gratitude for what they've given us. We also show them respect and understanding that, yes, they've been around longer than we have been. And they know things that we don't know. I think it was Mark Twain who once said, when I came back from college, I was amazed to see how much wiser my father had become. And I think the commandment to honor our parents gets us in touch with that truth. The truth that our parents are older, they've been around the block more, and we have to accord them respect for that. It gives us a sense of humility, and it actually opens us up to a greater, much greater sense of greatness. When we come back, just after a short break, we'll get into the how do we go and honor our parents. All right, so how do we honor our parents? Honoring our parents will consist of a few things. The essence of it is, how can I express that I love and I care for my parents? So, bring them food and drink, assist them with their chores, paying bills, assist them with shopping, assist them with doing their responsibilities, lightening their load. Certainly a person, every time they see their parents, they should greet them with a smile. You should do that with everybody, but certainly your parents. And you should also help them in any way you can. If you don't live in the same city as your parents, pick up the phone every week and give them a call. Or if you can, call them right before Shabbat on Friday afternoon to wish them a good Shabbat, a good weekend, then that would be even more special for them. But the essence of honor is finding out what will give my parents pleasure. And that's what I should do. There is no commandment for me to spend my money in order to honor my parents. But I have to identify what are their needs and what will give them pleasure. When I think about fear, fear is a different aspect altogether. Fear means I'm setting up a boundary, a relationship. So in the Talmud, it would say that if you fear your parents, many things you should not do. Like, for example, don't call your parents by their first name. Call them mom, call them dad. Don't call them Bill. Don't call them Mary. In other words, no. That first name business, there has to be a little distance between a parent and a child. It is brought down in the Talmud that people used to stand up when the parents would walk in the room. And I even know some people today that even keep that custom. Now, think about it for a second. If you're in a business meeting and the CEO of the company walks into your office, what do? You stand up and say, "Oh, hello, Mr. Schwartz, how are you? It's great to see you." Are your parents any less deserving of that kind of respect than the head of the company you work for? I would say that you owe your parents much more than you even owe your employer. And therefore, showing the respect to stand up when they walk in the room, that would be an appropriate thing. Now, just laying it all on the table, I never insisted that my children stand up for me when I walk in the room. But my rabbi told me that that is something that we've lost in this generation, and it's something that we should have worked harder to retain. Just that sense of awe, that sense of respect. It was very, very interesting. My oldest son was around, he's going to 8th grade. So he went away for 9th grade. He went away to high school. And my wife was lamenting to one of our friends saying, "Oh, Yitz," that's me, and Chemi, my oldest son, they're like best buddies. Like, it's going to be so hard for Yitz when his son goes away to school. So my son heard this. And then one day, before he went away, he turned to me and he, respectful kid, but he made it kind of like an offhanded comment like, "Nah, blah, blah, blah. When I was blah, blah, blah." I don't remember exactly what he said, but it wasn't in a tone of voice the way a son speaks to a father. It was in the tone of voice that a buddy speaks to a buddy. And I stopped him right then and there. I said, "Chemi, I'm not your buddy. I'm your father." And that was that. Now, like every kid who's going into high school, he was testing the boundary. It was natural for him to test the boundary. And a boundary must be tested to know what the boundary is. And he had heard, and I had agreed publicly, that we were best buddies. But just because we love each other and because we're close doesn't mean that I'm not the father. And you always have to retain that relationship. There's a big difference between being your child's friend and being your child's parent. And as parents, we have to insist that there is a little bit of a buffer. And as children, we have to give that buffer to our parents. So there's other things too, A child should not see a parent naked. Why? What's the problem with that? Well, I'll tell you the problem. There's many problems with it. But one of the problems is it lowers the level of respect. Yeah, no, he's just another person. So you don't have to be uncomfortable around your children. No. You should be loving and kind and close. But you do have to maintain a certain distance, a certain level of respect. And by doing so, we accomplish both commandments. The commandment to honor our parents and the commandment to fear our parents. They go together. Now, in general, honoring and fearing our parents means that we're going to accede to whatever our parents ask of us. But there are a few exceptions to that. You never have to do something that is against the law that your parents instruct you. And that also refers to Jewish law. In other words, if your parents tell you to do something that is wrong, the way to honor them in that case is by not doing it. For example, we Jews do not cremate our dead. Yet, in today's world, there's many people who want to save the expense of burying themselves by having themselves cremated. So I have oftentimes been asked the question, "Rabbi, my parents told me that they want to be cremated, and I know that cremation is against Jewish law." And my response is, "Well, you cannot cremate them." And their response is, "But I have to honor my parents' wishes." And I say, and the Torah says, Jewish law is, if you want to honor your parents, in this case, you do not do what they're telling you to do. It's very interesting. Honoring does not always mean doing what they're telling you to do. It means living your life in the best possible way you can in God's eyes. So therefore, you want to honor your parents, you know what you do? You Don't do something that's dangerous for them or yourself. Don't do something against Jewish law or against civil law, even if they command you. Honoring your parents means growing up and showing them that you can live the best kind of life you can live. You know, it's so interesting. If someone were to give you a tablecloth and you want to show your gratitude for that tablecloth, so what do? Give them a gift back? Pick up a tablecloth and say, wow, thank you so much for the tablecloth. I want to give you something back. Here, take a tablecloth. Will you do that? No. You're going to take the tablecloth. You'll spread it out. You'll invite them out for dinner, and they will see you using the tablecloth. If you want to honor your parents, what you do is you take the life they gave you and you make the most of your life. By making the most of your life, you're actually honoring them, and that will give them the most amount of pleasure. Now, my name is Rabbi Yitzwein. You're watching Life is Great, and I want to invite you, don't go away. We'll be back in a moment with more of the Rabbis Inbox and a chance for you to send in your questions, and I'll answer your questions that are most relevant to you. Do you know someone who needs a little more happiness in their life? Maybe it's you who needs more happiness in your life. Yes, you've seen the Life is Great TV show. You perhaps have heard the Rabbi Show. But now it's time to get Life is Great, revealing the 7 secrets to a more joyful you. This book was something tangible that you can give your friends and family, where they can keep by their bedside, take it on vacation, leaf through it page at a time or chunk of pages at a time, and each time they will learn another secret, another tool that they can use in order to get the absolute most out of life. What better present can you give your friends and family than the wisdom to live a better life? Welcome back to the Rabbis Inbox. This is your opportunity to ask me any question you wish. All you have to do is send me an email to rabbi@therabbishow.com. I promise you that I will respond to it, and I might even read it on the air. Let's get straight to these. First one is, Dear Rabbi, I have heard that one can honor your parents after they have died. How do I do this? All right, beautiful question. I have to applaud you on the question, because the truth is, the commandment to honor thy father and mother applies equally when they are alive and even after they have passed from this world. So there's several ways that we honor our parents after they passed. First way is to, as we mentioned before, live your life with the values that were important to your parents. Make the most out of your life. And then as people know you, that is a credit to them. If you mention their name, even in conversation, and by doing so you elevate their esteem, that's also a way to honor them. As a matter of fact, the Talmud even gives the example of how a person should, when you ask someone to do a favor who knew your parents, you ask them, say, hey, do my father a favor, help me out, fix my car, fix my muffler, more quickly. I mean, even in such a way, then they realize that you're thinking about the parents. In Jewish tradition, we have specific ways of honoring our parents. We light a candle on the anniversary of their death. We say the Kaddish, the memorial prayer. We say it every single day for 11 months. We also, on Jewish holidays, we say something called the Yizkor prayer. Again, by remembering them on occasions, on the anniversaries of their death and during particular holidays, we honor them. And of course, by performing commandments and giving charity in honor of your parents, then you honor them and you actually give them merit in the world to come. And I would encourage you to do that, especially if your parents have passed away. Then make a donation. You can make the donation to therabbishow.com, and we will put it to good use, and the merit will go to your parents, even if they've passed on to the next world. All right, the next question is also very interesting. It says, Dear Rabbi, growing up, my older brother would torture me and always told me that I have to honor him because he's my older brother. Is that true? Yes. You don't have to honor him because he tortured you. But in the commandment of honoring our parents, there are secondary relationships that we are obligated to honor. And those are our grandparents, our older brothers and sisters, our in-laws, and our step-parents. It also would apply to anybody, really, who has taken on that nurturing role, a role that is there to help us become greater people. For example, an adoptive parent. An adoptive parent is a parent. They may not have given you life, but as we find in the Torah that Moses, whose parents were Amram and Yocheved, he was raised in the Egyptian palace. He was known as an Egyptian man because the daughter of Paro who raised him was really his mother, not his biological mother, but she raised him and is credited with being his mother. And every child who was adopted has an obligation to honor their adoptive parents as if they were their parents. All right? Then the next one is, the last one is, my father, dear Rabbi, my father was very abusive to both my mother and I until we ran away from him. I do not want any relationship with him, never mind honoring him. You have mentioned before that one can only have a relationship with God if they honor their parents. I have no relationship with my father. So, again, this lady, I'm so sorry that she went through that experience. We honor our parents for what they did for us, not for what they did against us. When someone's abusive, when someone harms us, especially intentionally, or because of they themselves have a mental illness or whatnot, we don't honor them because they were mean to us. We honor them despite the fact they were mean to us. And we honor them because they gave us life. So, truth is, you can never lose sight of the gratitude you have to your father for being the sperm donor, in essence, to your mother. That you have gratitude for. However, you do not have gratitude for him, to him for abusing your mother or you, of course. And in that case, in your mind, you have gratitude. But again, if your father is a mean creep and abusive person, you're better off staying far, far away from him. But in your heart, you do not want to harbor only hatred for him. In your heart, you want to make an intellectual decision to keep far away from him, but still have gratitude by the fact that you are alive and recognize that for whatever reason, he was God's messenger to help bring you into the world, and for that you have gratitude. You never have to say hello to him, but as long as you're not harboring distance from him, then yes, you can have a relationship with the Almighty. My name is Rabbi Yitzwine. I want to thank you for joining me on another wonderful day of Life is Great. And I want to invite you, if you're in Las Vegas, to come on by my synagogue, Young Israel Aish of Las Vegas. Please say hello, and I promise to make you feel right at home. Looking forward to seeing you next week on Life is Great. So I'd like to encourage you today to go to therabbishow.com and make some kind of donation. Everything is appreciated in order to help us continue to spread these positive values and enrich and enhance other people's lives. Thank you.
Want more wine? Turn your radio to AM 720 KDWN or go online to therabbishow.com to hear The Rabbi Show starting right after the news at 9 a.m.